Hey guys, welcome back to another week of What's for Dinner. And if you're new here, hello and welcome. I'm Taylor. I'm a stay-at-home wife and mom, and I started these videos in 2018 to motivate myself to cook more for my family. Over time, it's turned into me motivating y'all as well and inspiring you to try new recipes. This week actually marks 3 years of me consistently doing these videos. February 9th, 2018 is when I uploaded my first one. So I have a playlist with over 150 videos down below if you need more dinner ideas. And if you like these kinds of videos, I'd love it if you subscribe down below. Now let's go ahead and get into this week's What's for Dinner. On Friday night, I tried a new recipe for a sausage tortellini soup. This one is made in the Instant Pot, and it's completely different from the one that I usually make on the stovetop. So I heated some oil in my Instant Pot, and then when that was hot, I added in some onion and garlic and just cooked that for a couple of minutes. Then I went in and added in half of a pound of ground sausage. You could do Italian sausage if you wanted to, but I just did regular ground pork sausage. And the original recipe is in grams, so it said 200 grams. And when I converted it, that was about half of a pound. So that's what I did. And I just cooked that for a few minutes until it started to brown. It didn't have to be done all the way because it is going to continue cooking when it comes to pressure. And then I went in with a can of diced tomatoes. Don't drop your can of diced tomatoes in there like I did. I went in with 2 tablespoons of tomato paste, 2 teaspoons of Italian seasoning, half a teaspoon of chili flakes, a little bit of salt, and 2 cups of my chicken broth. It calls for 4 cups, but you're going to add the other 2 cups in at the very end. And then I also added in my dried cheese tortellini. I picked this one up at Aldi in their seasonal aisle, and it was an 8-ounce, I think it was an 8-ounce bag, and the recipe originally said 250 grams of dried cheese tortellini, but as I said, I converted it. 8 ounces is about around there. So I put that in, and then I cooked this on manual high pressure for 4 minutes, and then I let it naturally release for 5 minutes. After letting the pressure naturally release for the 5 minutes, I went ahead and released the rest of the pressure manually, and then I removed the lid and stirred in the other 2 cups of chicken broth, as well as half a cup of half and half. And then I just let that heat through, make sure it was nice and hot. And then we served this with a loaf of bread that I bought at Aldi. It's the Italian loaf. It's take and bake. We absolutely love it. Whenever I find them on markdown, I buy it, and it's usually $1. Pop it in the freezer, and then when you want to cook it, you just pull it out, let it thaw, and bake it. And then we topped the soup with some Parmesan cheese. We really, really, really like this soup. It is Saturday night, and tonight for dinner I am making this chicken tortilla casserole from christineskitchenblog.com. I found it on Pinterest. I was trying to find something that used up some crushed tortilla chips because I had a bag of tortilla chips and the bottom was all crushed, and I didn't want them to go to waste. So I specifically searched for recipes that use crushed tortilla chips, and this was one of the ones that popped up. It says it's going to use about 4 cups of chips, so that is perfect. And it calls for 2 cups of cooked shredded chicken. So I am about to throw these 2 chicken breasts in the air fryer with some taco seasoning and some Badia Complete on them. And I will be putting them in there on 360 for a total of about 20 minutes. And I'm going to flip them halfway through. And I'm also going to coat them with a little bit of olive oil. Okay, my chicken is done and I'm just going to shred that up, but we're going to get started on this little casserole. It's a stovetop casserole. This isn't going to go in the oven, so I'm using this pan. This is not able to go in the oven. If it was going to go in the oven, I would use my cast iron. So I am going to pour in a little bit of olive oil and heat that up. And then I'm going to add in some diced onion and some diced pepper. It calls for bell pepper, but I just have sweet peppers. So that is what I'm going to do, and I'm going to cook those until they are softened. Okay, my onions and peppers are tender. Now I'm going to add in some garlic, cumin, paprika, oregano, and cayenne pepper and cook that for about 30 seconds. Okay, now I've added in a cup and 3/4 of chicken broth. The great thing about saving these pasta sauce jars from Aldi is that they have measurements on the side. So when all your measuring cups are dirty from cooking earlier in the day, you can use these to measure. They work great for that. So I've added in the broth. Now I'm going to add in a cup of salsa, or about a cup, whatever's left in this jar. Looks like about a cup to me. And then I've got a 14.5-ounce can of corn that I drained. And then I have a can of black beans that I drained and rinsed. And then I'm going to do about 2 cups of the chicken. This definitely made way more than 2 cups, so I'm just going to save the leftovers and maybe use it for lunch. And if not, I will just throw it in the freezer. But we're going to do... that's probably about 2 cups of chicken. And then we're going to do half of our tortilla chips. So I measured out 4 cups of tortilla chips. This was actually exactly what was left in the bottom of the bag that I had. And so I'm going to add in about half of it. Okay, I've spread it out, mixed it all up really well. Now I'm going to reduce the heat to low and cover this and let it just simmer for like 8 to 10 minutes. Okay, it's been 10 minutes. I just stirred this around. Pretty much all of the liquid is absorbed. The tortillas that I mixed in are like softened. And now I'm going to stir in 1 cup of cheese. And then once I do that, I'm going to sprinkle the tortilla chips over the top. And stir them in just a little, but leaving some kind of just like on the top, and then put another half a cup of cheese over the top. And then I'm just going to cover this and let it sit for a few minutes so that cheese can melt. Okay, here is dinner. Here are the kids' plates. And for mine, I just topped it with a little bit of extra salsa. And that is going to be dinner for Saturday. Wanted to give y'all a little update on this dinner. It was not a family favorite. We all thought it was a little bland. It needed some more seasoning. Maybe just some like taco seasoning. I know it had like some of the seasonings that are in taco seasoning. Maybe it just needed more of those. It needed something else. Mine was pretty good because it had the salsa on top, but then when I ate the like other part of it without salsa, I was just like, this is just kind of meh. It needs a little bit of extra. So if you do want to try this recipe, that's what I would suggest. We all just kind of thought there are so many other like Mexican inspired dishes that are better than this one. It is Sunday night, and tonight for dinner we are doing wings. I've got a 4-pound bag of wings from Aldi that I thawed out in the fridge overnight, and I laid them out on the sheet pan and dried them off as much as I could. And now I'm going to season them with some salt, pepper, onion powder, and garlic powder, and then put them in my air fryer. Probably going to do 2 batches and then just let them sit in the oven like on like a low temperature just to keep them warm. And I'm going to do these on 375 in the air fryer, and I'm going to do 25 minutes, flipping them halfway through, and then I'll turn it up to 400 at the end to kind of crisp them up if I need to. I'm working with my new air fryer, and it tends to cook things fast is what I've noticed, so I might not even need to do that. It just depends on how crispy they get. Okay, here are the wings. I did them in 2 batches, and I did end up like turning it up to 400 at the end of each batch so that they could get extra crispy for like 5 minutes. And then I just let them sit in the oven on like 250 degrees to stay warm while I cook the other batch. And then while I made fries, because I also made some fries, these are called like Idaho Super Crispy Dippers or something, so that's why they're kind of weird shaped, but they look good and they're really crispy, but because I baked them in the air fryer. And so here are the kids' plates. They just eat their wings plain. This one is Lily's. She's got some cucumbers, tomatoes, the fries, and 3 wings. And then this is Elijah's, and he has ranch, carrots, celery, cucumbers, and the fries, and 2 wings. And then I'm gonna toss, or me and Andy will toss our wings and some of this buffalo sauce. So I'll show you our plates in just a second. It is Monday night, and tonight for dinner we are going off the meal plan. I didn't feel like making what I had pulled out. I pulled out pork chops to do the pork Parmesan, which is like chicken Parmesan, but I just didn't feel like making it. So instead, we pulled out our tried and true grilled cheese and tomato soup. So the kids have ham on theirs. There's a little bit of ham left. They've got ham and cheese. And we did some cheddar, some white cheddar, and some American cheese. So 3 cheese, grilled cheeses. That's the white cheddar from Aldi. So good. Sliced it up. We use this cheddar, and then of course like Kraft American singles. And then this is the turkey, we use this too. I had the smoked honey ham, but it was the last 2 slices. And then Andy used turkey. So he's got turkey on his back there. And then, can you tell I ran out of softened butter? So mine looks silly. But I just did cheese. So I just have 3 cheese, grilled cheese. And then Andy has turkey on one, cheese on the other. And the kids have ham on each of theirs. And then I made another one just in case they weren't full and they wanted more. I made another one with just cheese for them. And then it wouldn't be grilled cheese night without our favorite soup. This is the Progresso Hearty Tomato Soup. I'm sure I've got a bunch of cans up here. Yeah, it looks like this. Some people can't find it. If you can't find the hearty tomato, the tomato basil is really good as well. But this is our absolute favorite. So I am just making that, and I will show you what it looks like when it's done. On Tuesday night, I made this recipe for pork parmesan with homemade marinara sauce. I've made this recipe quite a few times before. It's one of those that I have in my recipe binder, so I will leave the blog where I found it down below. I started off by making the marinara sauce. I like to do it first so that it can just like simmer away while I'm cooking the pork. So in a little pot, I heated up some olive oil, and once that was hot, I added in some minced garlic, and I cooked that for just a minute, and then I added in some crushed tomatoes, diced tomatoes, and tomato sauce, and then I stirred in some sugar, salt, and Italian seasoning, and I cooked that until it came to a little boil, and then I reduced the heat to low and cover while I worked on my pork chops. For the pork chops, I got 3 shallow bowls ready for the different breadings that I'm doing on the pork chops. So in one bowl, I whisked together 2 eggs. In another bowl, I mixed together 3/4 of a cup of flour with some salt and pepper. The recipe says to season the pork chops with salt and pepper, but I just add the salt and pepper to the pork chops because it makes it a little bit easier. And then in the third bowl, I mixed together 1/2 a cup of breadcrumbs and 1/2 a cup of panko breadcrumbs and 1/4 a cup of grated Parmesan cheese. I find that the kind in this like green shaker bottle works the best. Now I've heated 2 tablespoons of olive oil in my cast iron skillet. I'm going to use that to brown these pork chops. I'm starting off by dipping them in the flour and then into the egg and then into the breadcrumb mixture. I'm going to cook these for about a total of 5 to 7 minutes, flipping just until each side is brown, so about 3 minutes per side. And then these are going to finish cooking in the oven so they do not have to be cooked through. While the pork chops were browning, I preheated my oven to 400 degrees. Now I've got them all laid out in baking dishes. I had to use two because I just didn't want to crowd the pan. And I spooned on some of that homemade marinara sauce and sprinkled them with some mozzarella cheese. And then these went in the oven for about 15 minutes. And while they were in the oven, I went ahead and boiled some water and made some spaghetti noodles. We love this recipe. It's like a great way to still eat spaghetti without it just being regular old spaghetti and not chicken parm. The pork is just so good. I never would have thought to do this, but we really love this recipe. It is Wednesday, and tonight for dinner we are doing meatball subs. And when I went to Aldi, they didn't have any kind of like sub rolls, so I always have a recipe for making my own. I just sometimes like the convenience of buying it. So they didn't have any, so I am making my own. I will link this recipe down below. This is where it's from. It's called Homemade Subway Italian Bread. So I've started off by adding 1.5 tablespoons of active dry yeast in here and 1 tablespoon of sugar. And to it, I'm going to add 1 cup of warm water and then just mix that around and let it sit for about 5 minutes till it gets bubbly, and then we will move on. Okay, as you can see, this has like bubbled up quite a bit, nice and foamy. That's how we know that our yeast is still good, it's still active. So now I'm going to add in 4 tablespoons of olive oil, 1.5 teaspoons of salt, and then I'm going to start with 1 cup of flour, adding a little bit at a time until I get up to between 2.5 and 3.5 cups of flour. So I got about 2.5 cups of flour in there until I thought it was good enough. It was pulling away from the sides. It's still, you want it to be slightly sticky, but it was pulling away from the sides. It says pull away from the sides of the bowl, but stick slightly to the bottom of the bowl. So it's slightly tacky. It's good to go. I'm going to put a little bit of olive oil in my bowl and kind of coat this with olive oil. The recipe doesn't say to do this, but I do this with like every other bread recipe. So that's what I like to do. And then I'm going to cover this with a kitchen towel and let it sit and rise for 30 minutes. Okay, it has been 30 minutes. This dough has doubled in size. So I'm going to take it out, divide it into 4 equal pieces, and then those 4 pieces I'm going to roll into flat rectangles, and then I will roll it up. It's kind of hard to explain. You will see me do it. And then they're going to lay on a baking sheet for another hour to rise again. It's been an hour. About 15-20 minutes ago, I preheated my oven to 350. So this is what these are looking like. I'm going to go ahead and put them in the oven and bake them for 25 minutes. Okay, bread just came out of the oven. I've got a little bit of butter. I'm gonna brush these with the butter. You don't even have to melt it because the loaves are so warm that it'll just kind of melt it. And then I'm gonna cover these with the towel and just let them cool completely until dinner later. Okay, these are the meatballs I'm using tonight for Meatball Subs, Italian style meatballs. These were from Aldi. And I'm just going to cook them in my air fryer the same way I do my homemade meatballs, which is at 350 for 15 minutes, flipping halfway through. So I've got the little air fryer rack out, and I put a piece of parchment on the baking tray part because it's kind of hard to get that part clean. I think I'm going to buy a silicone mat for it, but for now I'm just going to use parchment paper and arrange the meatballs all over here, get them in the air fryer, 350, 15 minutes. Okay, here are our plates. I made the rest of those dipper fries in the air fryer, and then as you saw, I topped our sub rolls that I made earlier with the meatballs, some sauce, mozzarella cheese, and then threw it back in the air fryer. So it's a pretty much all air fryer meal. And then we've also got some sliced up cucumber as well, and that is going to be our dinner for Wednesday. Wanted to give a little update on the meatballs. I had got some questions about them in my grocery haul. We did not care for them. The kids had no complaints. They ate their entire meatball sub. No complaints. I was like, really? You like the meatballs? Yeah, this is delicious, is what they said. Then me and Andy ate it, and we were just like, not so much. We did not care for the meatballs. They just had a super processed, typical frozen meatballs. I was hoping they would be more like homemade, but I'll stick with homemade meatballs. It is Thursday night, and tonight for dinner we are doing Crock-Pot Mongolian beef. I honestly cannot remember if I've tried this particular recipe before. I will have it linked down below. It sounds really familiar, and I know I've done a Mongolian beef in the Crock-Pot, but sometimes when I try something, I forget to move it on Pinterest because I have one board for food I'd like to try and one board for food I've made and liked, and if we didn't like it, I just delete it. Sometimes I forget to do that. This was on food I want to try. So, I'm not sure if I've made it before. So this might be the first time, but I will be sure to let you know what we think. So we are starting off with this London broil. London broil is basically just a flank steak. It gets the name London broil because of how you're supposed to cook it, or one way to cook it. I'm going to be slicing this up. It says flank steak, thinly sliced against the grain. And yes, Andy wrote London Bridge and then crossed out bridge and wrote broil. I've got that, bloody. I'm going to cut that up, thinly slice it, and then that is going to get tossed in a 1/4 cup of cornstarch here in this bowl, and then I will put it in the crock pot. And then I've got some minced garlic, soy sauce, sesame oil, ginger paste because I never buy fresh ginger, 1/2 cup of water, and 1/3 cup of brown sugar. And then we'll need some green onions at the end. But I'm basically going to add some of all of this in the crock pot and then cook it on low for 4 to 5 hours. Okay, to go with our Mongolian beef, I am going to be making some fried rice, and I always start my fried rice with white rice that I made either earlier in the day or the night before, and I make it in the Instant Pot. And every time I talk about making perfect white rice in the Instant Pot, I get questions. Every time I make it, I leave it listed down below. It is super duper simple. All you have to do is equal parts water and white rice. I don't know how it works with like other rice. I think it takes longer to cook, like if you use like brown rice or jasmine rice. It might be the same, I'm not sure. This is just regular old long grain white rice, buying in a big, like what is it, like 25-pound bag for like 10 bucks at Sam's Club. So I have rinsed it this time. I don't always rinse it. I know you should rinse it, but I'm just being honest. I'm lazy sometimes and don't rinse it. Today I rinsed it. So there's 2 cups of rice. And then I will do 2 cups of water or 2 cups of chicken broth. Today I'm just keeping it simple, doing water. And then to keep it from like clumping together, sticking together and being super sticky, I just do a little splash of olive oil. That much. And then I also do a little splash of vinegar. People ask me why I do this. Honestly, I don't know. That's what the recipe told me to do at some point. It wasn't an Instant Pot recipe. It was just like a stovetop perfect white rice, and it said like both the oil and the vinegar help to keep the rice from sticking together. So I've always just done both and had perfect white rice every time. So again, this is just going to be just a splash. Gonna mix it around and then cook this on manual high pressure for 5 minutes. And then it'll do a natural release, and that usually takes about 15 minutes. And then after that 15 minutes, I'll fluff it, let it cool completely, and then stick it in the fridge until tonight when I am ready to make fried rice. Okay, here is what this is looking like. I haven't tasted it yet, but if we do like it, I think next time I would leave out the cornstarch. It just looks a little too thick. And then maybe add some at the end if I think it needs it. But it looks a little thick. Last step for the recipe is to add in 1/2 cup of some green onion. It says to cut them into about 1/2-inch pieces. Some of mine are bigger, some of them are smaller, but I'm just going to pour those in and let it sit for a few minutes while I make my fried rice. Okay, as I said, I was making fried rice to put this Mongolian beef on top of. I've shared how I make my fried rice many times, so I will leave a video where I showed how I made it down below. I have some extra fresh green onion on top of mine. This one is Andy's. And then for the kids, I put their Mongolian beef on the side of their rice. But that is going to be dinner for Thursday. This recipe was really good. If I make it again in the future, I will definitely do what I said with the cornstarch and just not coat the meat with it and just add it at the end. That way the sauce doesn't end up being too thick and you can kind of like customize how thick you want your sauce. That is going to be it for this week's What's for Dinner. I hope that you guys enjoyed it. Let me know in the comments down below if you are planning on trying any of these recipes. As always, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see y'all in the next one. Bye!